I came home to silence, not screams. The baby monitor had been switched off, the balcony door cracked open, and our daughter's tiny shoe lay on its side, like she'd slipped out of it mid-play. Zarel wasn't there. No note, no message. Just a red notification from the Nest cam. Motion detected. 2 hours ago. I ran outside barefoot, scanning the edge of the terrace, praying for a cry, any sound. But all I saw was the stain. It looked like blood, a long, trailing smear across the stone. My legs went numb. My wife left our 3-year-old daughter alone 2 stories up and walked out like she didn't exist. And when I confronted her, she smiled. Don't overreact, Jordan. It's not like she fell. But that was just the beginning, because what I uncovered next wasn't just betrayal. It was a blueprint for my destruction, and she almost got away with it. Almost. Before we dive into today's story, take a moment to share where you're tuning in from. We love seeing how our stories connect people from all around the world. Your comments and thoughts bring this community to life, and we're so grateful to have you on this journey with us. If you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new story. Now grab a cozy seat, maybe a cup of coffee or tea, and prepare yourself for a tale that will captivate your heart from beginning to end. Let's begin. I came home to silence, not screams. That kind of silence doesn't feel like peace. It feels like something's wrong. The apartment, normally humming with the cartoons Isla loved to ignore, sat still like a held breath. The baby monitor on the console was off, not asleep, off. That hit me harder than it should have. I dropped my keys in the bowl by the door and moved quickly down the hall. Zarel? I called. Isla? No answer. The kitchen was untouched. The marble countertop still shimmered from the morning's wipe-down. A half-eaten salad wilted in a glass bowl, warm and limp. A wine glass sat beside it. Full. That's when I saw it. The balcony door, left ajar. Just wide enough for Manhattan's breeze to leak in. And lying at the edge of the sliding glass door was one of Isla's shoes. Small, canvas, with a pink Velcro strap. It was tilted sideways, as if she'd slipped out of it mid-motion. My chest locked up. I ran barefoot across the hardwood, my heel catching on the rug as I threw the door open. And there she was, sitting alone, cross-legged, on the edge of the concrete terrace floor, humming to herself. She had her sketchpad open on her lap and a crayon clutched tightly in her left hand. She didn't even look up until I shouted, Isla! She blinked, turned toward me slowly, her curls ruffling in the wind. Hi, Daddy, she said, with a soft grin. She had no idea she could have died. I swept her up into my arms, heart pounding, checking her over for bruises, cuts, anything. She didn't resist, just wrapped her arms around my neck and leaned her head on my shoulder like she'd been waiting for someone to notice. Inside, I wrapped her in the emergency throw blanket and set her gently on the couch. She curled into the cushions, tiny legs tucked underneath her. I turned on the cartoons, more for me than her, just to make the silence go away. Then I opened the Nest app. Motion detected, 2 hours ago. I replayed the footage with shaking fingers. There she was, Zarel, heels, full makeup, wine glass in hand. She checked herself once in the mirror, then unlocked the door and slipped out. Not a glance back. No note. No call. Just walked out like the world behind her didn't matter. She left our daughter alone on a second-floor balcony for 2 hours. By the time she returned, Isla was asleep again, this time on my chest. I hadn't moved. I hadn't blinked much. I just watched the door, waiting to hear her keys. When she walked in, she looked refreshed, loose, careless. Hey, she said, placing her purse on the island. You're up late. You left her alone. She tilted her head. What? Isla, you left her outside. Alone. She was asleep. I thought. No. She was on the balcony, drawing. One move and she'd be over the edge. She went still, but her expression didn't register panic, just calculation. She's fine, she said. Don't be dramatic. Don't be dramatic? I repeated. You abandoned a toddler, Zarel. That's not a misstep. That's a felony. And that's when she smiled. That smile, small, controlled, a little amused. She didn't fall, she said. You're overreacting. Again. I didn't sleep that night. I stayed on the couch with Isla curled into me. Even in her sleep, her tiny hand clutched my shirt. She twitched, small jerks, night tremors. I rubbed her back until she calmed. Zarel never came to check on us. She turned off the hallway light as if nothing had happened and disappeared into our bedroom. Around 3 a.m., I slid Isla back into her bed. She stirred, murmured something, then drifted again. I pulled the blanket up over her legs and stood in the doorway watching her chest rise and fall. How many nights had I assumed she was safe just because I was with someone who was supposed to love her? That night broke something open in me. Not a snap, not a scream, just a clean, silent crack. By morning, I had downloaded 2 weeks of security footage. I didn't know what I expected to find. I just knew I needed to look. And then I heard her voice. If I can make it look like he's unstable. Just once. Zarel. In the kitchen, on the phone, pacing. The court always sides with the mother. One incident, that's all I need. Then laughter. A second voice. Xavina Crest. Smug. Reassuring. What if he records it? He won't. And if he does, I'll cry harder. I sat in my office that afternoon watching those clips again. Not just betrayal. Strategy. Zarel had a plan. This wasn't a slip in judgment. It was a test. A trap. A slow chess game in heels and gloss. I picked Isla up early from daycare. I didn't tell them why. Just smiled, signed the log, and lifted her into my arms. We're going on a little trip, I told her. Where? Somewhere that's just us. I took her to my office, let her nap on the couch while I started calling lawyers, then a trauma therapist, then a data recovery expert. By the time she woke up, I had an entire folder built. Surveillance footage, timeline logs, her drawings, dark, abstract lines I hadn't understood before. I looked at one sketch again. It was red, jagged, a circle, a smaller circle. What's this one? I asked her. That's the balcony, she whispered. That night, I watched Zarel at dinner. Her napkin folded into a triangle. Knife and fork parallel. The plate untouched. Her wine glass wasn't full this time. It was half finished. On purpose. So I wouldn't accuse her. Everything was staged. You're quiet tonight, she said. You're watching me too closely to notice. She gave me that same dry smile. You're always reading between things that aren't there. And you're always hoping I won't. After she went to bed, I stood outside again. The breeze whipped across my forearms. I stared at the chalk stain on the patio where Isla had dropped her red crayon. I'd mistaken it for blood. I'd panicked, just like Zarel knew I would. And now I understood why. She needed me to look erratic, impulsive, dangerous. Instead, I felt something else rising inside me. Focus, clarity, purpose. She thought she was building a trap, but she'd forgotten. I build everything, from scratch, from dust, from pain. I'm an architect. And the one thing I do better than anyone is design systems strong enough to withstand collapse. So I went inside, turned on my computer, and opened a new file. Case name, Cole v. Cole, Custody Welfare Defense Strategy. She didn't know it yet, but every lie she told had just been documented, filed, time-stamped. I wasn't going to shout. I wasn't going to break. I was going to build. The week after the balcony incident, I watched her like a man timing explosives. Not just her routines, her silences, her sighs. The way she paused too long before answering simple questions, like she had to scan through a script. She'd always been performative, but now I saw the edges of something darker, something rehearsed. Zirel knew I was off balance. That was the point, and I had the proof now. Screenshots, logs, 2 backup videos with audio, clipped, time-stamped, and securely encrypted in multiple locations. I wasn't just documenting what she did. I was preparing for war. She didn't see it coming. She was too busy preparing her own narrative. It started subtly. First, a text message from Isla's daycare teacher. "Jordan, hope everything's okay. Zirel mentioned you've been having some outbursts at home and asked if Isla could stay with her parents next week. Just wanted to check in." Outbursts? I hadn't raised my voice once since that night, and Zirel's parents lived in Connecticut. They hadn't visited since Isla was born. Suddenly, she wanted to send our daughter away? I wrote back, professionally. "Thanks for checking in. Everything's fine on my end. I'll be personally picking Isla up as usual. Zirel and I have not discussed any transfer of care." 15 minutes later, Zirel called me. "Why are you undermining me? Why are you planting stories about me?" "I'm trying to keep our daughter safe." "From what?" "Your moods." I laughed. Too sharp, too bitter. "The only one endangering Isla is you." She hung up without another word. That night, after Isla was asleep, Zirel stood in the doorway of my office. She wore silk, intentional. The robe slipped just enough at her collarbone to register as distraction. "We should talk," she said. "We're already talking, just not out loud." She crossed her arms. "I want to be fair. I'm willing to settle everything amicably. 50-50 custody, no alimony, a clean break." "What did you do?" That flicker in her eye, half surprise, half calculation, told me everything. "Nothing," she said. "Yet." I turned fully in my chair and looked her dead in the face. "You're staging something." She didn't blink. "You have no idea what I'm capable of." "Oh, I do. That's the problem." She walked away, but not before placing her wine glass, still full, on the edge of my desk. A prop, left like evidence. The next morning, I received a letter from the family court, request for preliminary mediation, filed anonymously, but flagged under a family welfare concern. She was laying the groundwork. I called my attorney, Sam, and read him the document. "They're trying to get temporary full custody assigned to her," he said flatly. "If the court buys the anonymous report even temporarily, you'll be on the defensive from day one." "She left Isla on a balcony alone. I have the footage." "Then we use that immediately." But I didn't. Not yet. Something in me needed to wait, to see where she would take it. Because I knew Zirel. She didn't settle for half wins. She was going for the full illusion. Devoted mother, protective wife, wounded woman surviving a volatile husband. And I needed her to overplay it. 2 days later, it happened. A CPS worker showed up at the office. Jennifer Gage, late 30s, blonde, dressed sharp but soft around the edges. "This isn't a formal interview, Mr. Cole. I'd just like to get a sense of the environment Isla's in during the day." I offered her coffee. Sat her in the conference room while Isla drew on my whiteboard with dry erase markers. I watched Jennifer's eyes, not what she said, but what she scanned. Her gaze moved from Isla to my posture to the artwork pinned on the wall. It was all part of her unspoken checklist. Jennifer asked the usual. "Is Isla in school full-time? Does she show signs of distress? Has there been any conflict in the home recently?" I answered calmly. I let Jennifer watch me work, speak to Isla, even sit through a short team briefing. I had nothing to hide, and I made sure she saw that. Afterward, she lingered at the door. "Can I speak off record?" she asked. "Of course." She stepped back in and shut the door gently behind her. This visit was prompted by a flagged incident report from a private physician, a pediatrician. I frowned. Isla hasn't seen one since her last wellness check, and I was there. That's what's odd. The report lists you as absent. Claims the child showed signs of neglect and environmental instability. So you're telling me someone forged medical documentation? She hesitated. I'm telling you someone's trying to create a trail. And some of us are trained to know when that trail's artificial. You think I'd hurt her? No. I wouldn't be here if I did. Then why are you really here? She leveled her gaze. Because I wanted to see who's building the real story, you or your wife. I slid a folder across the table. It contained the nest footage, the balcony incident, the audio clips, the transcript of Zarel's whispering to Zavina about faking instability, logs of late-night document extractions, witness notes from Isla's daycare. Jennifer took it, tucked it quietly into her coat, and nodded once before leaving. That weekend, Zarel disappeared again. She told Isla she was going to a spa retreat, but she didn't pack skincare or yoga pants. She packed her laptop, her passport, and my tax returns. I accessed the security logs while she was gone. 6 new printouts from the home office, all family finances, all downloaded around 3:14 a.m., the night after our last conversation. She was preparing her escape, or her strike, maybe both. I took Isla to the Natural History Museum that Saturday. We stood beneath the blue whale in the grand atrium. Its sheer scale dwarfed us, suspended, weightless, ancient. "It's flying," she whispered. "Not flying, baby. Floating." She tilted her head. "Like Mommy?" I crouched beside her. "What do you mean?" "She floats in the room, but she's not really here." That night, Isla woke up twice from nightmares. The second time she screamed, loud, raw. I rushed in, held her against my chest. She shook like a leaf in a storm. "Mommy was mad at me," she said. "Why?" "I told her you hug better." I didn't say anything. I just held her until sunrise. Monday morning, I got the call. "This is Judge Marin Delacroix's chambers. You've been summoned for an emergency hearing. Tomorrow." They were trying to pull an emergency order, without evidence, without warning. I told Sam. We met that night over wine and depositions. "She'll play the abuse card, the manipulation card, the he's spiraling card," he said. "Then let her talk. I'll end it with silence." In court, Zarel wore cream and no jewelry, understated, saintly. Her lawyer, polished, precise, stood up first. "Your Honor, this isn't about anger. It's about safety. We're not asking for a permanent custody change today. We're asking for stability. Mrs. Cole has noticed troubling behaviors from Mr. Cole, erratic outbursts, emotional instability, financial unpredictability, all affecting Isla." I wanted to stand up and scream, but I didn't move. The judge turned to them. "Do you have documentation?" They handed over a folder, staged apartment photos, selectively transcribed voicemails. An email, likely altered, about Isla's medication. Then Zarel took the stand. She cried 3 times. "He's not who I married," she said, voice trembling. "He hasn't been since Isla was born. I've tried to protect her, but I'm scared." "Of what?" the judge asked. "Of how unpredictable he's become." My pulse pounded in my ears. Then it was my turn. I stood slowly, deliberately. "Your Honor, I'd like to submit the following into evidence. Exhibit A, security footage from the Nest Cam, the balcony, Exhibit B, audio clips of Zirel plotting with Zavina to fabricate instability, Exhibit C, CPS field report by Jennifer Gage, present in the courtroom today. Jennifer stood, raised her hand, confirmed the report's origin, her personal concerns, and the falsified context of the pediatrician report. I could feel Zirel unravel. Her composure didn't break, but her eyes betrayed her. Wild, flashing, like something had slipped off the rails. And then I played the clip. Zirele's voice. He's obsessed with control. If I can make it look like he's unstable, just once, he'll lose the case. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Her lawyer looked down. The judge leaned back in his chair, folding his hands. Mrs. Cole, you left your child on a balcony unsupervised. You conspired to defraud this court, and worse, you used your daughter's well-being as leverage. This isn't a custody hearing. This is a credibility reckoning. Temporary sole custody was awarded to me. Mandatory psychological evaluation ordered for Zirel. Restraining provisions filed. Access restricted to supervised visits only. Zirel didn't speak as the orders were read. But her knuckles turned white where she gripped the chair's edge, holding on to the only thing she had left, her mask. Outside the courthouse, I didn't speak to the cameras. I walked Isla to the car. She skipped once, stopped, then looked up at me. Did we win? I smiled softly. We protected the truth. That's even better. She nodded and slipped into the seat. I looked out the window as we pulled away, the courthouse shrinking behind us. The war wasn't over, but I'd redrawn the battlefield, and for the first time in weeks, I wasn't playing catch-up. I was building. By the time the judge's gavel struck, I knew peace was a temporary condition. Winning custody wasn't a finale. It was an escalation, because people like Zirel don't break in public. They recalculate. The following week, she vanished from the apartment completely. No messages, no forwarding address, no requests to see Isla, only a silence thick enough to cut with a blade. And then, the whispers started. It began with a feature in the cut. The headline read, "When the father is the narcissist, one Manhattan woman's fight to save her daughter." It didn't name me directly, but every detail pointed straight at us. The article quoted anonymous sources close to the mother, a private therapist, who confirmed emotional volatility and even included photos, candid street shots of me leaving the courthouse, Isla in hand, blurred but unmistakable. My inbox exploded. Even clients forwarded it with subject lines like FYI or just checking in. My firm issued a neutral statement. We do not comment on employees' personal family matters. But I knew Zirel wrote it, or fed it. She was building her new identity, the survivor, the misunderstood mother. And it wasn't just about image, it was about revenge. The next twist came wrapped in paper, a formal lawsuit, defamation, filed against me by Zavina Lawson, Zirel's closest friend, and now a conveniently public victim of false audio manipulation. Mr. Cole recklessly edited and distributed fabricated audio material implying criminal conspiracy, thereby damaging Ms. Lawson's personal and professional reputation. I stared at the document and laughed. Then I stopped laughing, because I knew what this was. It was bait. They wanted to get me in court on their terms, make me spend, make me look aggressive, force me to play defense on something peripheral. If they couldn't beat me in family court, they'd beat me with exhaustion. I forwarded everything to Sam. Don't respond. Yet, he said. We'll use this as leverage. It's complete fiction. Exactly why it's dangerous. Fiction is harder to disprove than facts are to prove. Meanwhile, I doubled security, changed passwords, hired a private tech investigator. Because the last time I left a door unlocked, Zirel walked through it and nearly flipped my life upside down. What the investigator found didn't surprise me. But it made my stomach turn. She hadn't just taken financial records. She'd created mirror identities, credit checks in my name, opened trial accounts tied to old email addresses, fake inquiries to government agencies. There was a complete digital parallel of my life, half-built and laced with subtle corruption. She wasn't just trying to win. She was building a version of me she could kill publicly. At night, I couldn't sleep. Isla would climb into my bed sometimes, small and warm and smelling like baby lotion and lavender, pressing her feet to my thigh. "Daddy, will I see Mommy on my birthday?" "Maybe," I said softly. "Can you come too?" "I'll always come. Always." And she fell asleep like nothing in the world could touch her. Meanwhile, I stared at the ceiling, knowing Zirel was orchestrating something I hadn't yet named. The third strike came from a source I never expected. My assistant, Lyle, knocked on the door late one evening, eyes red, holding a manila envelope. "Jordan, I wasn't sure if I should bring this." "What is it?" "Something sent to the front desk this morning. No return address." Inside was a collection of emails, between me and a past client, edited, spliced, stitched together to suggest impropriety, a flirtation, possible misconduct. It was fake. I knew every word I'd ever written, but the tone felt real enough to make people believe. There was also a USB. Contained doctored video from an old Zoom meeting, angles never recorded, background audio that didn't belong. Zirel was upping her tactics. She was now tampering with perception itself. Sam filed a protective complaint and submitted a forensic breakdown of the metadata. But we both knew damage like that didn't need court validation to spread. It just needed a whisper campaign, and Zirel had already lit the match, and still, I had to be a father. Every morning I packed Isla's lunch, braided her hair, walked her to school in a city that suddenly felt sharper, colder. I smiled at other parents, waved at teachers, pretended nothing around me was burning, until I started getting followed, not by journalists, by a man, middle-aged, worn jacket, always sitting outside the cafe near Isla's school. He never approached, never broke the law. But I saw the lens in his hand, his eyes, surveillance. I took photos of him, forwarded them to Sam and the tech investigator. They confirmed a rental license tied to a media holding group, one where Zirel's cousin was a shareholder. Even her family was in on it now. And then, she called. 10 seconds after I dropped Isla off, my phone buzzed. I hadn't spoken to her in weeks. I almost let it go to voicemail. But curiosity is a cruel kind of hope. "Jordan, Zirel, I want to meet." "Why?" "Because you don't know the whole story." I paused. "I know enough to get a restraining order and full custody. You don't know what I've been holding back. Try me. Not over the phone." Her voice was flat, controlled, almost too even. I knew that tone. She was working a script, but I agreed, because I needed to know what was next. We met at a neutral cafe in Soho. Public, cameras, witnesses. She wore black, minimal makeup, designer coat. "You look tired," she said. "You look dangerous." She smiled faintly, no joy in it. "I want to make a deal." "This isn't arbitration. I'm not talking about court." I sat back. "Then what?" She leaned in. "You drop all proceedings. Custody, restraining order. You agree to co-parent, jointly, no litigation. You clean your image, I clean mine." "Why would I do that?" "Because if you don't, I release the package." "What package?" She reached into her bag and slid a folder across the table. Inside were photos. Me, shirtless, drunk, from a bachelor party years ago. Dated, irrelevant, but enough to raise eyebrows in a curated world like mine. Then more, doctored screenshots, fake medical forms, suggesting I'd once been on anxiety medication, all fabricated. None of this is admissible, I said quietly. I don't need a courtroom. I need Twitter. That's when I saw the crack. She wasn't just angry. She was desperate. I stood, slow and deliberate. You made one mistake. What's that? You thought I'd protect myself, but I'm protecting Isla. And this isn't how you get her back. I never wanted to keep her, she said suddenly, and I froze. What? I wanted to punish you. I still do. Then she left. Just like that. No drama. No shouting. She dissolved into the crowd like she never existed. That night, I sat with Sam. We reviewed everything. You think she's done? She's flailing, he said. But cornered animals are dangerous. This next phase is going to get darker. It already is. I poured another drink. We press charges? Not yet, but we prepare for war. Then came the final twist. An anonymous tip to the Department of Buildings, claiming I had misrepresented zoning permits on one of our luxury residential towers. The city issued a temporary halt. My firm froze assets. Investors called. It wasn't just about family anymore. Zarel had escalated the war to my career, and I understood, finally, the shape of her endgame. She didn't want custody, or even revenge. She wanted erasure. She wanted me scrubbed out of my own life, fatherhood, work, legacy, reduced to a cautionary tale, whispered about in private clubs and legal circles. But she made one fatal mistake. She underestimated my resilience. And worse, she underestimated how much I'd already lost. I wasn't afraid of ruin anymore. I'd already survived her. Now I was going to dismantle everything she built, piece by piece. Zarel didn't disappear. She multiplied. After the Cut article, the story spread like wildfire through boutique gossip sites and legal blogs. Whispers turned to headlines. They still didn't use our full names, but that was the point. Enough anonymity to be technically safe. Enough detail to make it unmistakably us. Someone called me the Manhattan Monster in a comment thread. Another asked if people like him should be allowed full custody. It was everywhere and nowhere. No one in my office addressed it directly, but meetings changed, eyes changed. I wasn't just Jordan Cole anymore. I was a question mark, a liability. I started timing my walks, changed my route to Isla's school, removed her name from all online directories. I even pulled down every family photo from my public accounts. I wasn't just defending against a lie anymore. I was burying pieces of my life to survive it. Then came the Financial Times op-ed. An independent contributor wrote about the social cost of charismatic abusers in elite families. Buried in paragraph 5 was a reference to a well-connected tech investor currently embroiled in a private family court dispute after allegations of coercive control. They quoted an anonymous friend of the mother, who claimed the father was surgically manipulative and knew how to hide his shadow behind good lighting. I didn't even flinch. I just printed the article, slid it into a folder labeled Phase 2, and kept moving, because I knew what came next. It was Tuesday when the firm's compliance officer, Rebecca Lynn, called me into her office. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. "Jordan, close the door." I did. "We received an anonymous tip yesterday. Claims you falsified income disclosures on 2 of our 2023 portfolio audits." I stared at her. "That's not just false, it's absurd." "I know, but they came with attachments, fabricated financial reports. Old invoices doctored to look like internal communications." "From where?" "Burner accounts, routed through VPNs, but the metadata on one suggests it was created in your home office." I swallowed. "That's impossible. Unless someone was in your home." My throat tightened. A memory surfaced. Zarel. That night she left her wine glass on my desk. She'd stood just where the keyboard sat now, her fingers brushing the mouse, maybe copying something, or maybe planting. "Jordan, I'm on your side," Rebecca said, "but we need to bring in outside forensics. Do it. And you'll need to take a leave of absence, at least until this clears. Effective when? Now. That night, I walked out of the office carrying a single box of belongings. Isla met me at the door, hugged my leg like it was just another Tuesday. I told her Daddy was going to work from home now. She clapped, said, "More pancakes." I smiled and nodded, then locked myself in the study and cried. Sam called me the next morning. "We need to pivot. She's not just attacking my custody, she's trying to destroy my entire professional identity. We know, and we're going to beat her to it." "How?" "By going public." I paused. "You mean a counter-narrative?" "A controlled leak, the footage, the audio, a personal statement from you." "I can't risk making this worse." "You're not fighting for appearances anymore, Jordan. You're fighting for legacy. You keep playing defense, she'll bury you with innuendo." I exhaled. "What do you need?" "Full statement, personal tone, real footage, and permission to send it to the Daily Signal. They're discreet but effective." I opened the folder labeled Phase 2 and started writing. 3 days later, the piece hit. When the truth is weaponized, a father's fight for his daughter. I told the story simply. The balcony footage, the manipulation, the restraining order. I didn't attack Zarel by name, but I told the truth. And it exploded. Within 24 hours, the article reached 600K shares. Thousands of comments poured in, divided, fiery, raw. Some saw me as brave. Others called me a polished abuser hiding behind a crafted image. But for the first time in weeks, I felt something crack. It wasn't my image. It was hers. The next retaliation was personal. My building's HOA received an anonymous complaint that I was neglecting my child in the common areas. Security footage proved otherwise, but the damage was done. Other residents looked at me differently, like maybe the smoke meant fire. Then Isla's ballet teacher asked gently, "Is everything okay at home?" Isla seemed a little withdrawn during class. I thanked her, smiled, reassured, then went home and stood in the kitchen, breathing hard, fists clenched, staring at the fridge like it had the answers. Zarel wasn't just attacking my work. She was eroding my entire world, inch by inch. And I had to hold it all together, while raising a 3-year-old who didn't understand why Mommy stopped calling. Then, one morning, the doorbell rang. It was Jennifer Gage. "CPS followed up on the anonymous complaint," she said. "Standard procedure." "How many of these does she get to file?" "Technically, unlimited. But the system flags for abuse eventually." "Eventually may not be soon enough." "I'm not here to interview you," she added. "I'm here to help." She handed me an envelope. "This is a referral to a forensic psychologist. She specializes in high-conflict custody cases. If you're willing, she can conduct a full family dynamics evaluation, and her report will carry weight." "And Zarel?" "Already declined." I paused. Which says everything. The psychologist, Dr. Erin Baines, wasn't what I expected. She was quiet, soft-voiced, but surgical with her questions. She spoke to me, to Isla, observed us together. Asked about play habits, stress reactions, bonding patterns. Her conclusion? Isla has secure attachment to you. Strong developmental grounding. No evidence of fear, emotional dysregulation, or trauma markers. And the mother? Based on recordings and background notes, exhibits signs of coercive strategy, attention-seeking escalation, and disregard for child-centered boundaries. I added her report to the folder. Phase 3. Meanwhile, Zarel resurfaced, online. A podcast interview. She called herself Z. Spoke in general terms. My ex. My child. The power struggle. but her voice trembled at the right moments. Her laughter rang hollow, but polished. She was painting a portrait of pain, suffering at the hands of an invisible tyrant. And people believed her. Sympathy flooded the comments. Calls for protecting women who can't speak openly. Donations to causes. She wasn't just rewriting history. She was building a platform. And I was done playing reactionary. Sam and I met in person the next day. "She's moved into phase 3, monetization," he said. "She's building a career on trauma she created. Which means she's about to get bolder and sloppier. Then let's make the next move. You ready to go nuclear?" I nodded. We drafted the full timeline: balcony footage, audio recordings, forensic reports, email metadata, tampered evidence, digital manipulation. Then we filed the lawsuit: intentional defamation, malicious interference, emotional abuse, filed publicly, attached with verified evidence, served through her podcast production company. 2 hours later, Zarel called me. I let it go to voicemail. Then I listened. "You crossed the line. You think you're safe behind lawyers and paperwork. You don't even know what I've been through. You ruined my voice." Then, soft: "But I'm not done. You don't get to take everything." I played the message 3 times, then saved it. Phase 4. A week later, something changed. No more articles, no more anonymous tips, just quiet. Then her lawyer sent a letter: request for private mediation. The tone had shifted. She wanted out. We met in a neutral office, wood-paneled, scent of lemon and old law books. She looked different, thinner, tired, worn but not humbled. I sat across from her, didn't blink. "Why the change?" I asked. "Because this isn't working." "Which part?" "All of it." "You made this war, Zarel." "I was trying to keep control." "Of what?" "Isla." "Me? Your own narrative?" She looked down. "Of myself." I said nothing. "You win, Jordan." "It's not about winning." "Yes, it is. It always was." And for a moment, I saw her. Not the manipulator, not the architect, but the girl who'd always needed to be the center of every room, even if it meant burning the house down to prove she was inside it. She stood up. "I'll sign the paperwork." "Full custody?" "Conditional. I get 1 supervised visit a month, for a year. Then we review." "And the podcast? The press? The interviews?" "Gone." "For good?" "Delete button's already hit." "You sure?" "I'm tired of pretending I'm the victim. I'm not. You and I both know it." She walked out without shaking hands, and I let her go. That night, Isla climbed into my bed again. "Is Mommy still mad?" "No," I said softly. "Just sad." "Is she coming back?" I kissed her forehead. "Not for a while. But I'm here. Always." She nodded, curled against me, and fell asleep. And I stared at the ceiling, knowing we'd finally stepped out of the fire. But we'd carry the burn marks for a long time. Everything felt too quiet after the mediation. There were no calls, no headlines, no legal notices. Zarel signed the initial settlement draft: 1 supervised visit per month, no press, no public appearances related to our family, full custody to me. But silence from her had never meant surrender. It meant recalculation. I waited for the other shoe to drop. And it did. Hard. Sam's voice came over the phone like a funeral bell. "She's backing out." "What do you mean?" "She's filed a motion to withdraw the settlement agreement. Claims she was coerced during mediation. Emotional distress. Psychological manipulation." "That's insane." The entire session was recorded. It doesn't matter. Once the motion's filed, the court has to hear it. And if the judge believes she wasn't acting of sound mind, it reopens the entire case. Exactly. I sat at my desk in the apartment, head in my hands. We have to destroy her credibility, not just dent it, burn it. Sam paused. There's a way, but it won't be pretty. At this point, I'm not afraid of blood. That night, I called Jennifer Gage. Are you still willing to testify under oath? About the coaching, the anonymous tips, the faked reports? Absolutely. You're not worried about your career? I didn't go into child protection to stay quiet when people manipulate the system. Good. We'll need you in court. Then I called Aaron Baines, the forensic psychologist. We may need your evaluation submitted as evidence. I've been expecting that. Zarel's walking back the mediation. She's escalating again. This is her last shot, and I'm not leaving it to chance. The court date was set for 2 weeks out. I spent the days preparing, organizing files, watching old footage, reviewing transcripts of her podcast interviews, even the ones that were taken down. I cross-referenced timestamps, matched background audio to call logs, built timelines. I wasn't just proving she lied, I was proving she'd built an entire ecosystem of deception, on purpose. Then came the subpoena. Not from us, from the district attorney's office. They'd launched a separate inquiry. Someone had forwarded them the metadata Sam's firm uncovered. Tampered bank records, fraudulent insurance filings. It was enough to trigger an investigation into intentional digital fraud. Zarela wasn't just facing civil loss. She was now staring down criminal exposure. And she knew it, because 3 nights before the hearing, she called me. Again. Jordan, please don't do this. Do what? This doesn't have to end in fire. You already said it. I was scared. I was trying to survive. By ruining me? By staying relevant. I didn't know how to live outside the narrative. There it was. The truth behind the war. She wasn't just trying to win. She was trying to matter. You used our daughter, I said coldly. You used the courts, the press, my reputation. And now you want mercy? I want an ending I can live with. You should have thought of that before you started filming your own lies. Then I hung up. The courtroom was packed. Media wasn't allowed, but the tension was journalistic. Zarel sat at the defense table. Minimal makeup. Her lawyer wore a navy suit, crisp and calculated. I brought Sam, Jennifer Gage, Aaron Baines, and my full file of evidence. The judge, the same from our earlier hearings, took her seat with a visible sigh. We are here to address Mrs. Cole's motion to rescind the mediation settlement agreement based on alleged coercion. Sam stood. Your Honor, before we begin, we move to enter supplemental evidence into the record, proof of manipulation, fabrication, and intentional abuse of legal process by the petitioner. The judge nodded. Proceed. We started with Jennifer's field report, showing no signs of neglect, false complaints, and audio capturing coaching. Then, Aaron took the stand. Based on psychological evaluation, Mrs. Cole exhibits patterns consistent with narcissistic sociopathy and coercive behavioral models. Is she a danger to the child? Not necessarily physically, but emotionally, yes. Her behavior is centered around her own needs, not the child's development. Then Sam played the recordings. Her voice filled the courtroom again. If I can make it look like he's unstable, just once, he'll lose the case. Gasps echoed from the gallery. Then the clincher. The DA's office entered their motion. An ongoing investigation into digital evidence tampering, with Zarel Cole as the primary subject. Her face went pale. Her lawyer looked blindsided. The judge took a recess. When she returned, her voice was calm but edged with finality. Mrs. Cole, you have not only failed to prove coercion, but have now faced substantial evidence of your own duplicity. She listed the violations one by one. False reports to CPS digital forgery. Coaching witnesses emotional manipulation of a minor attempted defamation. Public misconduct. Your request to rescind the mediation is denied. Temporary custody order is now permanent. You are hereby barred from all unsupervised contact. A psychological evaluation is required before any future custodial appeal. This court is also referring your behavior to the state's Ethics Review Board. And then, the final blow. You are to have no contact, direct or indirect, with the minor for a period of 18 months. Zarel didn't cry. She didn't even blink. But her nails dug into the table so hard, blood welled beneath her cuticles. I didn't look away. Outside the courtroom, Sam turned to me. That's it. You're free. We're not free until she stops. She will. After this. She's legally radioactive. We'll see. That night, I took Isla out for pizza. We sat under red lights, her legs swinging from the high stool, tomato sauce on her chin. Daddy? Yeah? You look happy. I am. Is Mommy still mad? Not anymore. Mommy's resting. Will she come back? One day. Maybe. But when she does, she'll have to follow the rules. Isla nodded solemnly. Good. I don't like when she shouts. I reached for her hand. She won't shout anymore. We walked home under Manhattan's cold sky. I held her tight the whole way. A week later, the firm reinstated me. The compliance review cleared all allegations. My projects resumed. Clients returned. The gossip faded. Sam told me the DA's office had opened a formal case file against Zarel. No charges yet, but the process was slow and deliberate. The podcast, gone. Social media, deleted. Influencer contracts, canceled. Her platform had collapsed like the lie it was built on. And me, I'd rebuilt brick by brick, but I never forgot. Not the silence, not the fear, not the way betrayal sat in my chest like a bruise that never faded. But I was standing, and Isla was safe. 2 months later, I got a letter. Handwritten. No return address. I opened it carefully. Jordan, I've lost everything. The image, the sponsors, the audience. And I deserve it. You were right. I used pain like currency and now I'm bankrupt. I won't ask for forgiveness, but I want to thank you for protecting our daughter from me when I didn't know how. Z. I folded the letter, locked it in the fireproof box with the rest, not out of vengeance, but memory, because survival has no statute of limitations, and peace is something you earn, not something you beg for. The day after the court ruling, I woke up to silence, not the kind that feels ominous or empty. This was a deeper silence, the kind that follows a war, the kind you feel in your chest before your ears. No knocks on the door, no alerts, no subpoenas, just Isla's quiet breath on the baby monitor and the smell of her lavender nightlight warming the hallway. It was over. Not the trauma, not the damage, but the battle itself. The courtroom war, the strategic attacks, the psychological siege. Done. And yet, I didn't trust the stillness. Because healing, I've learned, isn't quiet. It's noisy. It's the sound of questions, memories, guilt, and survival fighting for space in your own mind. I met with Sam that afternoon. The DA confirmed they're still building their case, he said. They've subpoenaed Zarel's production contracts, her podcast earnings, and 2 of her former sponsors. Do I need to testify? Probably not, unless they charge her. Will they? If they can prove intent behind the digital tampering, yes. But that takes time. She's not out of the woods, but she's buried deep in the brush. And civil? Your name is clean. Your custody is secure. Your reputation's stabilized, and your daughter is safe. Then, I guess, we won. Sam shook his head. No, you survived. That's different, and harder. 3 weeks later, I received a letter from the New York Board of Mental Health Licensing. They'd revoked Zirel's provisional therapy license for unethical conduct and breach of professional boundaries. Apparently, someone anonymously submitted all her podcast episodes, internal notes, and early client emails. That someone wasn't me, which meant others were watching, people who saw the cracks beneath her curated glass. Meanwhile, Isla adjusted. She stopped asking about her mother every day, then every week. She started sleeping through the night again. She laughed louder, smiled wider. One morning, she crawled into my bed just after sunrise and whispered, "I had a dream Mommy was hugging me." I stiffened. Was it scary? No. She said sorry, and then she disappeared into the clouds. My chest ached. I brushed the hair from her eyes and said nothing, because even when a storm ends, children still carry the thunder. I began therapy for myself. I sat across from a trauma specialist named Ava Santiago every Tuesday. "You waited too long," she said in our second session. "I didn't have time." "You didn't make time." She was right. I'd been so focused on protecting Isla, proving the truth, documenting the lies, I forgot I was bleeding too. "What part of this broke you the most?" she asked. "That she used our daughter as a pawn." And? I hesitated. That part of me still wanted her to be redeemable. That silence, again. Then Ava's voice, soft but steady. "You were grieving someone who never existed." I started writing again. Nothing public, nothing professional, just reflections, daily entries, sometimes a few lines, sometimes 1,000 words. I wrote about fatherhood, about fear, about control. About how power, when abused, doesn't just damage others, it rewrites your own self-worth. And slowly, I began to see the pattern of how I'd been reprogrammed to doubt myself. Zirel hadn't just twisted courts or media, she'd twisted my identity. But with each page, I untwisted it. A month passed, then 2. The world moved on. The court didn't contact me. Neither did she. Until the letter came. Not handwritten this time. Typed. Professional envelope. Postmarked from Pennsylvania. It was an offer. Zirel's attorney, now replaced, proposed a formal surrender of all future visitation rights in exchange for full termination of public pursuit against her. She wanted to disappear. Not fade. Not recover. Disappear. It read, "My client acknowledges the harm caused to the child and the father. She seeks no further contact, custody, or involvement. In return, she requests that Mr. Cole agree to withdraw his civil defamation suit and cease all mention of this case in public or private platforms." Sam reviewed the letter. "It's a full surrender. I want it notarized, filed, and registered with the family court. Already in motion." I signed it, not out of kindness, out of mercy. And because power, real power, is having the right to destroy and choosing not to. 6 months later, I got an email from a stranger. No subject line, just 2 lines of text. "She lives in a rehab facility in upstate Vermont. Nobody visits. Just thought you'd want to know." I didn't respond. I didn't want to know, because the chapter was closed. And even sympathy, when mixed with trauma, feels like gasoline on a dormant fire. Isla turned 4 that July. I planned a small party, just close friends, her cousins, a few preschool friends, balloons, cupcakes, no big gestures, just joy. She wore a yellow dress, asked for a butterfly cake, laughed through the entire scavenger hunt. But the part I remember most, when she blew out her candles and looked at me, eyes shining, and said, "We're okay now, Daddy." I smiled, and for the first time, I believed her, because healing isn't about pretending the war never happened. It's about walking freely after it does. There was one last thing I needed to do, one last thread to cut clean. I visited the courthouse records office, requested a certified copy of the original emergency protection order, the one I filed the night of the balcony incident. The clerk looked at me strangely. You want the original? Yes. Why now? Because I need to remember the beginning. She handed me the document. I framed it, not out of pride, out of survival, and hung it in my home office, not as a warning to others, as a promise to myself. Some scars we show, others we wear under suits, under smiles, under Sunday pancakes. But they're all there, and they're all real. Zirele vanished from the public radar entirely. No more articles, no podcasts, no mentions. She became a ghost in her own narrative, and I became a father again, not a combatant, not a target, just a man raising a daughter. Sometimes Isla asks, "Will I see Mommy again?" And I answer honestly, I don't know. But if you do, it'll be when you're ready, on your terms. She nods, then goes back to building Lego castles or drawing clouds, because her life is no longer built around absence, it's built around stability. One day, years from now, she'll ask for the full story. I'll tell her. I won't sanitize it. I'll explain how power can be a drug, how some people choose control over connection, how love doesn't excuse destruction, and how strength isn't in holding on, it's in knowing when to let go. I'll tell her about the lies, the court, the recordings, the pain, and I'll show her the truth, the documents, the proof, the journey, not to make her hate, but to make her aware. Because if there's one legacy I leave her, it won't be fear, it'll be discernment. I've kept every recording, every transcript, every file, locked in a vault, digitally and physically. Not for revenge, but because history matters. And sometimes survival isn't enough. Sometimes you have to build a map out of the fire, so no one ever gets lost the same way again. The first time Ela asked me if we were a normal family, we were at the Central Park Zoo. It was late spring. The cherry blossoms were already starting to wilt. She had one of those bright orange snow cones in her hand, melting faster than she could keep up with. Her face was sticky. Her curls framed her eyes. And she looked up at me with that innocent, crushing curiosity kids reserve for only the deepest cuts. Are we normal? What do you mean, kiddo? Some of the other kids have mommies and daddies. We don't have a mommy at all. I squatted down next to her, wiped a trail of syrup from her chin. We have each other. But that's not the same, right? No, it's not the same. But it's enough. She stared at me, head tilted, as if testing my answer against some private logic of her own. Okay, she said, then nodded. But if it's enough, why do the other kids have more? I didn't know what to say. I didn't want to lie, and I didn't want to tell her too much, too soon. So I just sat beside her on the bench and said, some people start with more, some people end with more. But the ones who feel safest, they're the ones who know what enough feels like. She didn't ask again, but I kept the question in my back pocket, the way a soldier keeps a sealed letter in his coat, waiting for the day it needs to be opened. And in some ways, that's what this whole journey has been about. Not winning, not revenge, just knowing what enough feels like. My life is quieter now. Still busy, still full, still demanding, but quieter. There's no more court, no press to dodge, no ghosts in the inbox. Zirel stayed gone. The last I heard, she relocated to somewhere outside Burlington. The rehab rumors persisted, but I didn't chase them. I deleted the email that said she was spotted working as a private consultant under a new alias. If she rebuilt herself, I hope she did it far away from cameras and causes. I don't hate her. I never did. I hated what she became, what she chose, and how close she came to taking our daughter down with her. I never refiled the defamation suit. It sat in a drawer for a long time, fully drafted, every citation backed, every image and soundbite cataloged. But eventually, I shredded it. Not because she didn't deserve it, but because I no longer needed her ruin to validate my healing. That was the final piece of power she still held. My resentment. When I let it go, she vanished entirely. Professionally, things returned. Clients who had disappeared came back. Referrals trickled in. A few months later, I was asked to keynote at a fintech summit, proof that the industry, while cautious, hadn't written me off. But I walked into that ballroom a different man, less impressed by applause, more aware of silence, and more willing to leave the room entirely if the cost of staying was pretending. The most meaningful thing that came out of it all. Not the custody win, not the reputation rebuild, not even the peace. It was Isla. Watching her come back to herself, watching her draw again, hearing her sing off-key in the shower, talk to her stuffed animals, ask a million questions, watching her reclaim childhood. That's what saved me. Not the law, not the lawyers, not the system. Her. Some nights, I sit on the balcony. Yes, that balcony. I thought I'd never use it again. For months, I couldn't even look at it without feeling my pulse spike. But now, I sit there in the quiet, coffee in hand, city lights beyond, the murmur of traffic below, and I remember, not with rage, not with fear, but with perspective. It was the place of the fracture, and also the place of awakening. I get asked sometimes, quietly, privately, by other fathers in messy divorces, how did you do it? How did you survive it? How do you not hate her? I never have a clean answer, because the truth is I almost didn't. I almost broke. I almost gave in. But then I'd hear Isla laugh or feel her arms around my neck at bedtime, and I'd remember, you don't need to win every battle. You just need to be standing when the war ends. Last month, I started writing again, really writing. Not just reflections or court timelines, but a book. A memoir, maybe, or something close to it. I haven't settled on a title, but the opening line is clear. I lost my wife the day she left our daughter on the balcony, and I found myself the moment I realized I didn't need her back. It's not a story of bitterness. It's not even a story of justice. It's a story of clarity and fatherhood, and how sometimes the most dangerous lies are the ones wrapped in emotional packaging, manipulation dressed as pain. I hope it helps someone, even if it's just one person standing at the edge, wondering if they're crazy, wondering if they're the problem, because I've been there, and I know the way out. Isla started school this fall. First day, she wore a blue backpack twice her size, insisted on packing her own snacks, and told me, very seriously, "No crying, Daddy. Be brave." I promised I would. Then cried the second I got back to the car. She's strong, fierce, empathetic, curious. Everything I hoped she'd become, and more than I could have imagined. And someday, when she's old enough, I'll tell her everything. Not all at once. Not in a single sitting, but in pieces, in moments, in ways she can absorb without carrying the full weight, because the truth matters, but so does timing. And when she's ready, she'll know, not just what happened, but how we made it through. I've kept one photo of Zurel, just one, from before the chaos, from before the podcast, the lies, the war. She's holding Isla as a baby, smiling, unaware of the storm ahead. I keep it not for nostalgia, but for reality, to remind myself that people are not all good or all bad. They are choices, stacked, repeated, lived. She made hers, and I made mine. Sometimes I wonder if she regrets it, if she lies awake at night wishing she'd chosen differently. But then I remember, that's not my story anymore. I don't need to carry her consequences. I only need to protect the life we rebuilt. Isla's latest drawing is taped to the fridge. It's a house, a tree, a small girl, and me, taller, arms out, smiling. Above it, she's written, "This is my safe home." And maybe that's all the closure I ever needed. Not a verdict, not a settlement, just a child who knows she's safe. In life, some battles don't begin with weapons. They begin with silence, with suspicion, with small betrayals that echo louder each time they're ignored. And often, the deepest wounds aren't visible. They're the ones inflicted by manipulation, by abandonment, by the quiet unraveling of trust. But pain can be a beginning, a confrontation with truth, a mirror that shows us not just what was lost, but what must be rebuilt. Healing isn't perfect. Justice doesn't erase the scars. But strength isn't found in erasing the past. It's found in facing it, learning from it, and choosing differently moving forward. This story was never about revenge. It was about clarity, about reclaiming a voice, about standing firm for those who cannot yet stand for themselves. Because love, real love, isn't loud. It's steady. It's present. And in the end, it's what saves us. Thank you for joining us on this journey. If this story moved you, helped you, or made you think, please let us know in the comments. We read every single one. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss another story that matters. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.